Whether you've been asked to create a commission on a smaller canvas or are looking for a change from your large style paintings, painting on a smaller canvas can be a challenge for any artist. Over the last couple of years, I have been painting on smaller canvases for many different reasons, and in today's video, I will go through those reasons, along with giving you my best tips and tricks for learning to adjust your painting size and painting style to create stunning artwork on smaller surfaces. The first piece of advice that was an absolute game changer for me when painting on smaller canvases was having a printed version of my reference that was sized to the shape of the canvas and not relying strictly on a digital reference on my iPad. So for example, with this cat painting I am creating today, I made sure before I started that I printed the reference of this cat using my at-home computer printer, nothing special, but I made sure that it was printed size as to 5x7. I'm working on a 5x7 canvas. I want to make sure that my reference is also 5'7" when it is printed. And this will allow me to see what the painting should look like at this size and how the details, the areas of the painting adjust in size relative to my canvas. Once you have your size as reference printed, when I am painting, typically I will use both my hard copy and digital copy of my references to create my paintings. Both options have very different but helpful purposes. The printed reference will give you a general overview of your painting and the anatomy shape of your subject, while the digital reference can provide all of the intricate details on the fur, the texture, and the color matching that may be required for your painting. The dry time with acrylic is always a huge factor as to why some artists love it and some artists hate it. And those of you who hate acrylic and somehow ended up on this video and on my channel are probably nodding right now in agreement. Dry time sucks. And the same can be said about dry time moving from a larger canvas to a smaller one. Believe it or not, this actually changes drastically, in my opinion, with the size of your canvas. My next piece of advice is to allow even further dry time between layers on smaller canvases, and I'll tell you why. The reality is, with smaller canvases, we have much less room to work with, and this can result in layers that are not quite dry blending together accidentally and making colors that we just don't want. It is not that the acrylic doesn't dry as fast. The paint never changes its properties. It is the area that we are working in that is much smaller and much more susceptible to, let's say, a stray brush hair ruining our day by going into a neighboring color. With a larger canvas, we have a lot of real estate to work with. Let's be real, while one area of our painting is drying, we can work on an entirely different side of the painting and not disturb that area at all. Whereas on a smaller canvas, we just don't have the space. So it is important to keep in mind while we are painting to bring our patience pants and take our time. Work layer by layer, allowing for each step to dry entirely. This will keep you from having to redo areas of the painting that may blend together or feeling frustrated that you are not getting the desired look that you were hoping for. You may not be able to work the entirety of the painting depending on the size of your canvas like you may wish to, but you will work faster, keeping your mistakes minimal and, most importantly, your happiness high. Discussing dry time and the amount of space available leads me into my next tip, which is using smaller amounts of paint for your canvas. This was a trick that took me, admittedly, way too long to implement. Now, it may seem super obvious. Well, Cassie, of course, a smaller canvas means you need less paint. But for whatever reason, this did not click in my mind for forever, so I am including it in this list. I think it is important to talk about. I was so used to the amount of paint that it took to paint on a 16x20 canvas that I found myself not only wasting a huge amount of paint that ended up in the garbage or dried on my palette, but I also ended up with a much more textured painting than I wanted. Because I was so used to painting large, I would really load up those brush bristles full of paint, and when I went to put down a brush stroke onto my canvas, the paint would kind of ooze out of the brush bristles and kind of leave what I like to call little like ant hills along my painting. So they're kind of like these veins of acrylic that clump and then kind of dry that way, and even when you're looking at the painting on the wall or in a frame, you can kind of see them sometimes. Now, some artists love textured painting paintings, that's how they want their paintings to look, you are more than welcome to paint this way. For me and for my clients who were commissioning me, we had agreed on a very smooth, sort of seamless portrait. So that wouldn't have worked for me. And it took me forever to realize that I just had too much paint on my brush, and I was either having to wipe off the excess or really just pay attention to how much I was loading up from my palette. Now, this leads into a very good question that I get asked quite a bit, is how much paint do we need on our palette in order to paint on a smaller canvas? Now, of course, with art, there is no correct answer. Everyone is different. However, over my years of painting, I found that the size of a dime or the size of a quarter on your palette is perfect for a smaller canvas. Now, if you're working on a 5x7, you'll need a little bit less. If you're working on an 8x10, you can add a little bit more. So just kind of play with that according to the size of canvas that you're working on. What I like to do as well for my painting and on my palette is if I find I'm running low on a color or I'm not sure how much I'll need, I'll do just the tiniest little dot of paint. Let's say it's red and I'm working on a lion nose. I might need just a little bit of pink and never use it anywhere else on the painting. What I like to do is I like to add a medium to it as well. So I have a mixing white, which I like to add in. It does not change the property of the color at all. It just bulks it up and adds more volume. So this is always a great way, in addition to the small little dime or quarter that you're going to use of your paint, you can also add in some medium. I add it into white a lot of times so that my titanium white goes further. Or if I'm painting a very large black background, maybe I want to add some medium to that as well. So I'm not using straight paint out of the tube. I'm kind of bulking it up a little bit. So keep that in mind. Always, always, always better to go in and add in more paint to your palette than realize by the end of your session, you're having to, cover it in cling wrap or find a way to save this so you're not wasting money. We interrupt this broadcast to give a quick shout out to our channel sponsors of today's video, Chartpak, Grumbacher, and Molotow. Thank you so much for your continued support on the channel. Their links can be found in the description box below, as well as places where to purchase their paints and brushes for your own art toolkit. Cassie Draws, back to you. In addition to using less paint, we also can use smaller brushes for these tiny paintings too. I'm going to share which brushes I use that are the most popular and, in my opinion, the most effective. Because we are working on a smaller size canvas, we can cover more space with less brush. When working through my paintings, I prefer to start with a small filbert to fill in any blocking areas or larger amounts of what I call simple coverage. This can be, for example, a background or around the subject's face, that initial preliminary blocking layer. These, of course, can range in size, but my most popular for my smaller paintings is a size 2 and a size 4 for my filberts. This seems to be the sweet spot. They are not too large, they don't fan out that much, but they're not quite as small as what I would consider a detail brush, so they work perfect for that first step. Above all else, my most popular, I would say, is the small round brush. Now, these are the most popular for me with my large paintings, but especially for my small paintings. And the reason being is they are crucial for creating texture and detail within a very small area. So these work perfect for your eyes, noses, and finishing highlights within the fur of a subject, so getting that shine just right. I typically will use a 000, a 00, and a 0 for my paintings, and find that these sizes are the most versatile. Lastly, I will come in with my liner brush that is extra small, and this works wonderfully for long hairs, whiskers, and other finishing touches around my paintings, maybe some foliage, and I tend to use this brush very sparingly as it is such a unique brush stroke. I want it to have spotlights in my painting. I don't want it to become overwhelming and unrealistic, that this brush stroke is just used around the entire painting. I definitely encourage anyone who is wanting to try to paint smaller that a set of these brushes are crucial. Ones where the brush tips are smooth and not broken. A lot of times with some older brushes or larger brushes, we use them and they get kind of put through the works a little, that they may start to have these wayward hairs that are sprouting off from them. And these wayward lines in such a small area on your canvas can be really, really frustrating. So if you can invest in a small brush set, I definitely encourage you to do so. But if not, you can get a good brush cleaner that a lot of times these can actually smooth out your older brushes and kind of help restore the hair a little bit. So definitely something to consider, not necessary, but something that I think will help you as you kind of transition to a smaller canvas. All right, everyone, listen up. It is time for our Cassie Draws Small Canvas Speed Round. The top reasons why I love painting on small canvases. Go! Number 1. Easier on our hands as there is less coverage needed, no big motions for your arms or your shoulders. Number 2, save money on paint as you use less. Number 3, canvas cost is lower and there's more options for sizing typically in smaller canvases. Number 4, we finish paintings a heck of a lot quicker. Number 5, more affordable for customers to purchase. And number 6, coming up for Christmas, make great gift ideas. Now, of course, I am making these types of videos silly and fun. Well, hopefully, of course, but I think it's something to be said that as an artist, you have the choice to work with whatever canvas, material, or medium that you prefer. Create with what makes you happy and what you feel is your best work. I myself am always going to advocate for smaller canvases, as I find that a lot of times in the fine art world, small canvas paintings are just not taken as seriously or looked at in the same regard as a large painting hanging in a gallery somewhere. I myself personally just don't feel as though it gets the same attention, and I'm trying to bring more love to small canvases. And if you as an artist find that you love working with small canvas and create fine art, that is totally okay. I do too. I love it and it makes me happy. Art is art. Do what you love. Haven't had enough of all that art goodness? Check out this next video for tips on painting your own pet portraits, and hey, maybe you'll paint them on a small canvas.